All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to invite you all to take your seats, and we're going to get our program started here right away. I am pleased to welcome you all here to the 10th Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference. Thank you all very much for being here for this special keynote address and fireside chat featuring the Honourable David Eby, Premier of British Columbia. Premier Eby is going to give a short keynote address followed by a fireside chat with Dallas Smith, who's the president of the Nanwakolas Council. My name is Logan Wong, and I will be one of your MCs throughout the conference this week. Throughout the event, I will be sharing this role with our esteemed conference chair, Dallas Smith. Before we go any further, I'd just like to provide a quick safety share. If there is an emergency and we are required to evacuate the room, the Vancouver Island Conference Centre muster station is located at the corner of Gordon Street and Cameron Road, across from the Conference Centre's loading bay. Please ensure you walk through the exit doors and make your way outside in a calm and orderly fashion. I'd also, very importantly, like to recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Sinimak First Nation. We'd like to recognize the enduring connection that the Sinimak people have to this land, and we express our gratitude for their stewardship over many generations. Now with that, I am pleased to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker. We are honored to welcome the Honourable David Eby, the 37th Premier of BC. Premier Eby is the first Premier to attend IROC, and we are thrilled to welcome him back to the IROC stage for the second year in a row. Our goal here at this conference is to foster collaborative dialogue between First Nations, government, and industry. Having the Premier of BC participate here underscores the significance of those discussions, and we're very grateful for his participation today. So let's get IROC 2026 started, and please join me in welcoming the Premier of BC, David Eby.
Thanks for the introduction. It's nice to see everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today on Nanaimo territory, and appreciate them hosting us here. And it's great to be in Nanaimo. Came over from Vancouver just this afternoon, and it is such a beautiful part of the world that we live in. We're so fortunate to live in British Columbia, and thank you to Nanaimo and Nanaimo for hosting us here. This is a really important moment for us to have this conversation today. I've been looking forward to this event, and it is my second time here. And I hope to attend for many more gatherings like this, because I truly do believe that the work that we're doing in this room is the solution to many of the challenges that we face in British Columbia and across Canada right now. First of all, let me thank Dallas and the IROC team here for bringing us together. This gathering has been happening for many years now, but it is one of the unique opportunities for us to get together and have frank conversations about the challenges and opportunities that are ahead of us in this province and in this country. And I understand this year we have visitors from outside of British Columbia. I wonder if you could just put your hand up if you're from outside of British Columbia. Anyone? Fantastic, fantastic. Well, welcome, welcome. So let me start with the challenges as I see them. We have a scenario globally of incredible instability, and here in British Columbia, that has really shown up in a number of very specific ways that's quite relevant, I think, to many of the people here in this room. First of all, our biggest trading partner to the south of us, we're in a highly contentious relationship right now, unfortunately, because of the president's actions. And that has had a huge impact on key sectors of the Canadian economy. Here in British Columbia, we particularly feel it in the forestry sector, but also in manufacturing that relates to anything related to metal, using metal in your manufacturing. And we've seen a little bit in seafood. And other provinces are seeing it in different sectors as well. We've also seen a huge impact on affordability for families related to the price of gas because of the war in Iran. And this time of uncertainty and instability and economic impact really underlines what we've seen as a country that we all need to be addressing. And despite the enormity of these global challenges, the increased costs of just about everything, the impact on major sectors of the economy, there is nowhere that I would rather be to face these challenges than in British Columbia. And the reason for that is we have what the world is looking for right here in this province. And there are a number of things the world is looking for right now, in my opinion. One of those things is, without doubt, energy, critical metals and minerals, forest products, natural resources, technology, but also, I think we have here the people and the relationships and the ability to use as an example to be an island of stability in a moment globally of great instability. But we have to choose that as a province. We have to choose that as a country, and I think Canadians generally are choosing that, with some notable exceptions. Now, someone's laughing in the front. They were thinking of someone. I won't mention any names. But we do have to choose it. And there is actually a forked path in front of us. And it is very significant to the future of this province, the direction that we choose. I had the opportunity, I was in the green room, I was hanging out with Dallas and his kids, and we were like, it's hard not to think about the next generation when you're in a room full of energetic kids. And when we think about the kind of province we want to build, the kind of country we want to build, the kind of economy we want to build, where we stand on our own 2 feet, we have to choose very carefully when there's a fork in the road ahead of us. And that fork in the road, and this will be hopefully as partisan as I get today, but this fork in the road is very stark in BC politics right now. We had a leadership debate with around the Conservative leadership selection process, where the candidate who was successful openly on the stage pointed to another candidate who was married to an Indigenous woman and said he shouldn't be able to run for leader because he was in a conflict of interest because he's married to an Indigenous woman. Now that's not the kind of province I want for my kids. That's not the kind of future I want for my province. And I understand the pressure of leadership campaigns and all these other things, but what I don't understand is not clarifying that, not taking it back, not addressing it. I think it's inexcusable. But it is an example of the choice that is in front of us. It is a choice between conflict and division in our province that will prevent us from realizing the promise and the potential that we have, and the other direction, which is so clear to everybody who's in this room, which is that our fates are tied, whether we're Indigenous or not in British Columbia. If we are successful, we will all benefit as a province. There is no question about it. And if we are not successful, if we are divided, and if we fail in our efforts, because of that, we will all be poorer. I can assure you, there will be fewer jobs. There will be less money for public services. It will be dire. And we will be more vulnerable to the kinds of attacks that we are seeing coming from south of the border, not stronger. And so this fork in the road is a very important moment for us. And I want to outline for you why I believe so strongly that we have to head in this direction, despite, I will acknowledge, the remarkable success of some opposition politicians to say that we should stop talking, that we should stop this work, that it is the wrong direction. When I look at the mining sector, for example, here is a sector largely takes place on Crown land and requires huge upfront investment before it even makes $1 in profit. Many natural resource sectors are like this. It requires the exploration investment. It requires the actual mine site investment, all the geotechnical work, everything. You have to put a huge amount. You have to believe that you have at least 10 years of runway to be able to produce and deliver profits to your shareholders and all these other things. You need certainty in the mining sector to move forward. Otherwise, you can't do it. And the mining cycle goes with the price of metals. And so if you take years in a permitting process, you don't know when you're done whether the price of metals will be where it needs to be for your mine to be profitable or not. And so it is so crucial in the mining sector to have a clear runway to a permit, clear understanding that you're going to be able to operate, and a clear path to be able to create jobs and economic opportunity. And so when I look at what's happening in mining in British Columbia, and this is in the environment of the government making an explicit commitment, we're going to sit down with First Nations, we're going to try to stay out of court, we're going to work out agreements, we're going to have the Declaration Act, we're going to do this work together. What has happened in the mining sector? Well, if you just listened to the political rhetoric, you would have no idea that last year we set a record. We set a record for mining exploration in the province of British Columbia. And that in the first 4 months of this year, we had $4 billion in new mine investments, and that we had the very first, I think in North America, and I don't know about the world, but the very first joint environmental assessment process with a First Nation, with the Tahltan First Nation, or a Section 7 agreement under the Declaration Act, for the Red Chris mine. And we're following the same process with SK. Those are multi-billion-dollar investments, thousands of jobs, incredible mining activity, setting records. Why is this happening? The price of metals is high. It's been high before. Why are we setting records now? Why are more mines opening now? It is because we have been clear with companies. You've got to sit down with nations. But we're not putting it all on the companies. We're saying, we'll work with you. We'll work with you. We'll go. We'll work with the nations. With Tahltan, it's not just about the mine. It's about, are we going to have a pharmacy in our community? Are we going to have the community center that we need? And can we get the federal government to the table around addressing an agreement with us for long term around reconciliation? And that's where the government can come in and all of us pulling together cooperatively addressing each other's concerns. And when we do that, we are creating the opportunity for multi-billion-dollar investments. Look at energy. Look at what is happening in LNG. An unbelievable announcement just like a week ago. The Niska First Nation, with their energy project, Silism's LNG, signing a $10 billion agreement with Germany to export LNG in an offtake agreement. And why is that able to happen? Because this is a project that will be electrified, so it will have much lower carbon emissions than comparable projects, some of the lowest carbon emissions in the world. And the Germans, they're not excited about using LNG. They need it for their industry. They're trying to get off fossil fuels, just like the rest of us trying to reduce their carbon pollution. But when they looked around the world, they saw a project with the lowest carbon footprint that would help them achieve their goals that was an Indigenous-owned project. Cedar LNG, incredible. Well under construction. The largest Indigenous-owned energy project, we think, in North America. Again, low carbon footprint, benefiting the community, Haisla First Nation, incredible work. These are the big projects. But there are other projects that we're working on. We talk about BC Hydro. We talk about how are we going to get the electricity to these mine sites, to energy sites, to communities across the north. The North Coast Transmission Line, taking a totally different approach to constructing a key transmission line for the province of British Columbia, where Indigenous co-ownership of the transmission line will be delivered for the first time, where nations are involved in the planning and construction of the line. And that is just one of many hydro projects. We have 14 clean energy projects in our province, wind, solar, of which 9 are majority Indigenous owned. And so when I say that our fates are tied, like when I say that if we're going to be successful as a province, we have to be successful together. The reason why we're able to do this, the reason why we are number 2 in Canada for investment, we're number 1 for per capita investment since we formed government. We're number 2 in growth in GDP. We're number 2 to Prince Edward Island, which hurts. They have a smaller denominator. It's a math joke. But, and we're projected to be number 2 again next year. And damn it, we're going to be number 1 eventually. But the reason why we were one of 2 provinces that showed GDP growth year over year last year is because of what's happening in this room. It's because of the efforts in this room. It is not a consequence of what's happening in this room that we are not succeeding, that there is chaos and problems and failure and disaster, just the opposite. And it is up to everybody in this room. I will be frank. The NDP government cannot deliver this message on our own. It is up to everybody in this room to say, there is a forked path in front of this province. And we have to choose the path that will deliver prosperity for everybody. Because if we do not, if we insist that it is a conflict of interest between valuing working together and trying to do this on our own, I mean, we are not going to be successful. And the cost will be borne by all of us in this room, and we know the cost will be borne disproportionately by those who are already struggling in this province. This is a huge moment for our province. This is a moment when we make a decision about the kind of province we want to be. And I appreciate that the choice is stark. I think that's actually helpful because, you get these people who are mealy-mouthed and they say one thing and then eventually they come in and they do something else. No, we need to make a choice. Are we going to do this work together or not? And if we do it together, we will build a stronger, more prosperous, more successful province for everybody. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of what we're delivering together. I know we've got a lot more we can do. I know there are huge opportunities. I know government is not perfect. We are not perfect in this work. I don't pretend we are, not even close. But I know that we have a plan and a vision about how together we're going to deliver this for all British Columbians, and we will be successful in doing it. And I am convinced of that because I have seen it, and it is happening. And it is $88 billion in major projects leading the country in delivering for the kind of economy we want to build to have a strong, resilient Canada because of the partnerships in this room. That's my pitch to you. That's my ask for help. And I know we can do it together. I've got 2 colleagues here I want to recognize. I've got Minister Sheila Malcolmson, who's here. Her job is, absolutely, her job is poverty reduction. That is her ministry, that is her job. And I know the people in this room, you know how we're going to deliver poverty reduction in this province. And I want to thank Sheila for being here. She's also a Nanaimo MLA. And then Stephanie Higginson is right beside her. Stephanie's job right now is around primary care, around making sure that people have access to health care. And I'll just digress just a little bit before I subject myself to Dallas's grilling fireside here. Stephanie's job is primary care, family doctors, getting access to British Columbia's family doctors. I was out here in Nanaimo for an amazing event that was pulled together. All these American doctors and nurses and health professionals came up here. They're so excited to work in Canada. We fast-tracked that work. Steph is helping deliver that to identify the barriers that prevent them from coming on and help us get them to work. But I'll tell you what they said to me over and over about why they were excited to come to Nanaimo in Canada. We've hired 700, 2,000 have applied for jobs out of the US. He said, number 1, public health care. I don't have to ask what a patient's insurance is before I recommend a treatment plan for them. I just recommend what's best for the patient. That is amazing. I love that. I'm like, well, that sounds pretty good. But the second was, my kids feel good here. They go to the school, they're part of the community, everybody's welcome. It doesn't feel like there's big divisions. And we gotta hold on to that for our economy, for the success of our province, but also it turns out for like getting a family doctor because they're leaving the United States to get away from that divisive approach. And so I'm really excited about this room. I'm excited about what we're going to do together, and I thank you very much for the honor of being here again this year. I look forward to the conversation I'm going to have with Dallas. Let's get into it. Thanks.
spring is turning into summer, and my grilling skills have been evolving over the last couple of weeks, my friend. We were just talking about this in the back room, and first thing I got to point out is when I opened this conference last year, I didn't have that many people here, so either Res Dog Walkers is getting way more popular, or people were here to listen to something that they needed to hear, some optimism. You and I have been kind of having this ongoing conversation for a couple of years now, but the more we can do in rooms like this of talking about how it fits and how it works is so important for the general public to start to see a little bit. I know you have a projects list of projects that are important to the future of British Columbia, and I'm glad they're not all just, due respect to the LNG and the big ones, they're not just about the big projects. It's about how British Columbia comes together. But obviously, we're in a bit of a challenge now where, probably told people I wasn't going to do this, but you knew I was lying. Cowichan, I live in Duncan. It's a challenging place right now between garbage dumps and the ruling and those sorts of things. Musqueam, all these different things that are grabbing people's attention. Why don't you just shed some light on some of the work that government's doing? And I know it's being done because I'm part of it in some rooms, but why don't you just shed some light on how we're getting away from the litigation-led exercise and the transactional relationships that we're trying to build? Maybe just shed some light so that people can understand that there is a whole lot of people determined to doing this right.
Well, it's a great question. It's a big question. So first of all, if First Nation feels they need to go to court with the government, don't begrudge them that. I understand that. But for us as a government, we're trying hard to stay out of court, find those agreements outside of court. And the reason is it's the unpredictable nature of the decisions that come out the other end. The Cowichan decision, Cowichan didn't go in asking for the keys to people's homes or businesses or whatever. That wasn't what they were asking for in court. We've issued a statement together with them after the court decision saying the same thing. Provincial government's not coming for people's homes. Cowichan aren't coming for people's homes. We're going to find this path. But the court decision, you read the court decision, it's like, it's not helpful, in my opinion. And so the court will render decisions that almost inevitably say you've got to sit down and work it out. Like the key part of that court decision was ordering the provincial government to sit down with Cowichan First Nation to work it out. And that's what we're doing. We're sitting down, we're working it out, court ordered. There's just a limit to what courts can do. At the end of the day, you have to sit down and work it out. And so we're trying to skip that middle step of the uncertainty that comes with that. And it's everything from land use planning. So we have 12 tables around the province right now, maybe 14. Doing land use planning where it's industry, First Nations, local governments, and sitting down at the table and saying, okay, well, here's the area that needs to be protected. Here's the area where we have working forest. Here's the area where there's going to be industrial development, whatever. And that shared exercise we're putting a lot of energy into because it presents the greatest possibility for faster permits, and the permits are getting a lot faster because everyone agrees, yeah, that's the area where we agree this kind of thing is going to go. And we agree this is the area that kind of work's going to happen, and we agree this is the area we're going to make sure that area is protected, and everyone knows that in advance. They don't put a ton of money into making a pitch for an area where no one's going to support the project. And so that land use planning for the province is really going to assist us in avoiding those kinds of disputes. We've got a lot of work to do together. We've got big challenges and I think recognized among nations around overlap issues, around sort of differing visions and shared revenues related to activities like forestry around neighboring nations and those kinds of things. And we've had good success in working them out. But what is really going to move us forward is the landscape planning process. The other piece is instead of waiting till after the environmental assessment decision to engage or having the environmental assessment process be the only opportunity for a nation to engage. We're trying to move that work up front so that the environmental assessment isn't a process of accommodation and negotiation, that work all happens up front so that we can get through the permitting process really quickly and do it that way. And that looks totally different in so many different projects. Like sometimes it's an ownership stake, sometimes it's just a benefits agreement, sometimes it's employment agreements, sometimes it's about addressing a longstanding issue in the community that's unrelated to the project. And so government being involved up front with project proponents to be able to do that work. And it's not something that recommends itself to a standardized process, and so it's frustrating sometimes to people in that way. It's a little bit different each time, but the philosophy is the same for each one, to address the issues up front rather than after the permits have been issued and everyone's like, I don't understand why there's this big protest, I don't understand why there's this lawsuit that's delaying the project and all of that. We're trying to deal with it up front.
Well, and I think that's so important because if we look at the evolution of Indigenous involvement in major resource development, let alone the smaller projects that we're talking about, it's always sort of been after the fact. But I think, over the years, the companies that want to do business right have sort of read that writing on the wall. And I mean, while the legislation came in and concerns people, this work was already being done anyway. I think that's one of the challenges I have when people keep telling me you got to repeal DRIPA, and I'm like, well, go ahead. It's not going to change Section 35 rights and title. It's just going to take away the years of experience that we have amongst each other on figuring out how not to end up in court. But unfortunately, these 2 or 3 court cases really came at the same time, and they created some uncertainty. And I think of my good friend Chief Wayne Sparrow, who's publicly said at least 10 times that they're not coming for anybody's land, but that's still kind of the clickbait that we're getting in social media. So what more can we do? I mean, you said that we can't really build a standardized framework, but because we've done so much learning on the go, is your government prepared to keep working on frameworks that get to the same place, whether it's through DRIPA legislation or whether it's amendments proposed? Is your government committed to working in a place where we have decision-making points? Just like any company is going to make a financial investment decision, there's 2 or 3 targets they have to make along the way to get to that. And I think that's one of the concerns, is people think that reconciliation is stopping every permit at every stage, and that's not really the case. I think we need to do a better job of making room so we can show where there are pinch points for us to have almost a confidence vote, if you will. Maybe it's a little too early or too late in the legislative season to use that analogy, but I mean, every once in a while you have to have that check-in to make sure everybody's still on the same page. But we've seen people get through it now. I mean, I see my good little brother Carrie's here from the Taltan. They worked through this process. It wasn't the legislation that drove them. The legislation gave them the ability to have a landing place, but they took this work amongst themselves for years and brought it to a position where they're outlining and I don't want to do too much of the spoiler alert because he's doing one of the panels with us, but just examples of where things that have been started before this mess of these court decisions came. Is your government committed to continuing to try find that path forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and it's good context because I know this room knows, but I like saying the same thing in every room because it makes it less complicated. This province was settled largely without treaties. There are some historic treaties, but compared with other provinces, not the situation here. So we've got Indigenous rights of title in the province, which we have to reconcile with provincial government governance authorities. And so that piece is something that often gets missed and skipped and not understood. To your point, that the Declaration Act did not create these obligations on government. This comes from the Constitution, but the Constitution didn't create them either. These are the inherent human rights of Indigenous people, and the challenge that we face in a province settled largely without treaty, that we got to work together and figure this out. And so the Declaration Act was meant to be a structure by which we did this work. And the court saw that differently, and so we'll figure that out with the court. But regardless, we have to do the work. And we have to do that work together, and it's going to continue. And, even if it was an entirely, I come from a human rights background as a lawyer. I worked for a bunch of years on much to my mom's chagrin, on very low-paid or free legal work for communities around human rights issues. Even if I didn't feel that in myself, that this is the right thing to do, even if I was entirely self-interested about what will be the thing that will create the most money for the province as quickly as possible to pay for public services and close the deficit and create as many high-paid jobs for British Columbians as possible, as quickly as possible, putting as much money in their pockets as possible. This would be the same approach. It would be the exact same approach. And the reason for that is the way that we act quickly, the way that we can deliver quickly, the way we can create jobs and get the shovels in the ground and do the work on projects big and small is through this cooperative approach. So yes, it's going to continue. And that's the part that is the most frustrating about the political discourse that has been enabled is like, okay, well, we're going to do this without the First Nations. It's like, okay, well, I mean,
Go ahead and try.
bonne chance. Yeah, exactly.
No, and I mean, it's interesting because this is our 10th celebration of BC Indigenous Resource Opportunities. We've been hosting the conference since 2009, I believe. 2008, I think, was our first year. And so the world's changed a lot since then. And I think about how hard it was to find multiple success stories to run a 3-day conference on. They were really hard to do. And now we probably turned 50 people away. But what can we do between First Nations and the provincial government on doing a better job at telling more about the good side of these things? I mean, obviously we can't fight social media. You know, we all have our accounts and we all do what we can do to tell good stories, but anger seems to be what gets people following and clicking and all that. So what can we do collectively? And maybe I'll ask Robert Phillips this question. I'm going to have him on the grill tomorrow afternoon. So, you know, my interest is, you know, what is the province and the First Nations Leadership Council talking about to get us not away from those problems. Those problems are there and they're going to have to sort themselves out, and there's good people in place that are going to do that. But how do we make it clear that these are some isolated challenges and there's so much good work going on out there? It's almost like none of us want to agree that it's working sometimes, and that's politically a bit of a challenge in the situation that we're in now. So just some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the key is success. I think we have to show the success in communities. And that success looks like job opportunities, it looks like training opportunities, it looks like revenue for communities, it looks, and the issue isn't just in the non-Indigenous community. I believe firmly that we have to do a good job in communicating in Indigenous communities as well. Like, communities have to see the benefits of this approach across the province, regardless of who they are, and that's a pretty. The problem in the political cycle is that's a pretty high bar to set when you have a 4-year, ideally, 1-vote majority, a 4-year term to do this work. Because in year 1, if that's the intent that you set, and that's what we've done, you're setting up these agreements, you're setting up these systems, the public service moves slowly, all these other things, and then you get things up and running, and you start to sign the agreements, and you get the projects, and you start to get final investment decision, and then the projects take about a year themselves to get their shovels in the ground, even after they've got the permits, because they're lining up their investment. And so by the time you're at the end of the 4-year cycle, or at least getting close to the election cycle, people are like, well, you know, you've been here for 4 years, but, you know, what's going on? And so that is the hardest part about this is, and also the pendulum nature sometimes of politics, where the next guys in are like, we're going to undo everything that the last guys did, and then the next guy's going to, we're going to undo everything the last guys did, and then you're working with an entirely different playing field. So my hope is that we are, through our permitting reforms, through the work we're doing together, that we've been able to compress this to the point where we're going to see real meaningful results in the next couple of years. The final investment decisions we're going to see over the next 12 months, of billions and billions of dollars in projects, and the smaller projects too. They're going to make a meaningful difference in quality of life for people in smaller communities across the province.
Nice, and maybe just as I see we're getting close to time, I think that's a good step into, you know, where would you like to see things? I know as First Nations, we're trying to work closer with local government because of zoning issues, as we're acquiring fee simple land, as we're acquiring, you know, new addition to reserve, and trying to work together with the local community. Some of these major projects, obviously, you know, have the potential to benefit everybody, and I think that's part of the story as well. But you know, where do you see things 2-3 years from now, obviously we got to work really hard to show people why we started down this path towards reconciliation and why it actually is supplementary to sustainable resource development, because I think that's one of the things that people aren't realizing is we're not shortcutting any environmental standards. When First Nations are signing on to projects, they're asking all those questions about the environmental impact, about the community impact. So if we all do the jobs that we've been set up and put in place to do, where do you see us in 3 years, collectively?
Yeah, we got a plan called Look West at the provincial level. Lays out exactly what the province's goals are over the next little while. The key sectors and industries and how we plan on getting there. So you can have a look at that. But the short answer is, we are going to be, in British Columbia, the economic engine of Canada. And there are a number of sort of just good fortune things that lead to that. The sort of natural bounty of this province, that I talked about, the geographical positioning of British Columbia on the West Coast, facing the Pacific, growing economies, the actions of the United States decimating the relationship with the traditional center of Canada, Ontario, Quebec manufacturing, and the relationship with the United States. For all those reasons, and Europe facing different challenges towards the east. So for all those reasons, British Columbia has these huge advantages. And I believe that we have been putting in place the pieces, the permitting regime, the relationships, the financing agreements, the international trade relationships that are going to turn that opportunity into British Columbia being the economic engine of the country of Canada. And what that means is two things. One is a responsibility on everybody in this room and on the provincial government and others that we have to work together and realize that opportunity for the rest of the country, because other provinces face challenges that we don't. And the second component that brings is it puts us in a position where we are able to create the kind of province that we want for our kids. One that's open, diverse, and welcoming, one with strong public services that are supportive of the kind of province we want to have, and one with jobs and opportunity in every corner of British Columbia for people, including training opportunities to be able to take advantage of those jobs. And that is realizable, I think, in the next 3 years, which is an amazing thing. And there are a confluence of factors, intentional and otherwise, that led us to this moment, but it puts a massive responsibility on British Columbia to step up in this moment for the entire country. And I'm excited about it because of what it'll mean for British Columbians, but I'm also proud of what our province represents for the future of the country.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you on a personal level. I know my kids were driving us crazy, but at the same time, it was a little bit relaxing, wasn't it?
It was, that background family hum. I'm very used to that, so I like that.
I thought about snapping at him once, and I'm like, oh, he's got 3 kids. He understands. So, and I want people to remember that, whether it's a First Nations leader, a provincial leader of either party, they've been elected to do a job, but they're people at home. There are people who go home to their families, and there are people who go home and take care of other people and have other people's, livelihoods in their hands and in their responsibility. And I think it just, it's a little bit of a kumbaya thing for me to say, but I think we just need to remember that we're all people at the end of the day. Some of us have been elected and need to be held accountable, and that's nothing wrong with that at all. But I just, as we have been through some of the craziness over the last little while, when we get anxious, we get extreme, and then we say things that are harder to take back, and it takes away the ability for the collaboration that's brought every one of the people in this room here. So I just want to thank you, my friend. You're always a phone call away. We'll get you on the podcast soon, and I don't know if that'll help your approval ratings or hurt them, but we'll get to that point and we'll figure it out. So thank you. Let's give the Premier a round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, Premier and Dallas, for that engaging conversation and for kicking off IROC in such a great way. Premier, we really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule. And in typical IROC fashion, Dallas, if you want to present the Premier with this gift as he runs out the door. We'd now like to invite you all to join us for our opening reception in the trade show area. It's generously sponsored by Interjex. This is a really great chance for all of you to connect and set the tone for the next couple of days and engage in some meaningful dialogue. We have some excellent cultural performances tonight, so we really do encourage you all to stick around, and we will see you in the trade show very soon. Thank you.
Oh yeah, you can stop him recording. Yeah.